Louisiana federal judge orders the Biden administration to stop removing posts from social media companies. And on July 4th, the only thing Democrats celebrated was their hatred of America. That much, much more on the politically tolerant. My name is Zachary Groper.
And I'm Cooper Brown.
If you like us, make sure to hit that subscribe button and make sure to give us a thumbs up. Now take us away for the first story, Cooper.
Right. So as you mentioned, that a ruling from the federal courts has come down saying that Joe Biden can no longer infringe on the people's Second Amendment right by going through various social media companies. And we know that this has been occurring for many years now, particularly in 2020 when they were censoring the Hunter Biden laptop story and anyone that deviated from the COVID-19 narrative, which we realized that all that was, mostly false, and the Hunter Biden laptop story was true. So between just those two things alone, they've been really harming the public's ability to speak about very important current events. And now we've seen that there's new rulings coming down from courts saying that that will no longer be tolerated.
I mean, on to your point, Cooper, this is a huge day for our civil liberties, for our First Rights Amendment, because it really articulates what the Biden administration has been doing, what they have been doing to censor particular individuals who went against the narrative of COVID during the pandemic. And as you also stipulated, went against the Hunter laptop story. They tried to move the post down on Twitter. So it really puts an emphasis on that. And since it's a federal judge, it actually orders the executive branch to do it. And what they gave what's called an injunction to the Biden administration. An injunction, a lot of times it's used in restraining orders against particular individuals, but it's also a particular order given to the other person to force them to actually obey by that order.
Right. And this is very important because these are now truths that have been come out at this point. These are things that we have known that are, these are true facts now. We know that the things that they were talking about during the early days of the COVID-19 were false, even particularly the things about vaccines and the effectiveness of those. And then all the way up into the Hunter Biden laptop story, which we now know, a lot of us knew, and apparently actually the FBI knew it was all along to begin with. But while knowing that those things were true, they were going on and telling social media companies like Facebook, like Twitter, in meetings that they were having, consistent meetings, sometimes on a weekly basis, telling them, hey, watch out for this Russian disinformation that's coming around, and really nudging these corporations to censor these very, very prominent stories that could have completely changed the elections in 2020. And the exact wording that this judge gave here, it says that this ruling bars a number of federal agents and officials from urging, coercing, pressuring, or including in any manner the removal, deletion, suspension, or reduction of content containing protected free speech on social media, either by meeting or communicating with company representatives or flagging specific posts. So this again, there is the few restrictions that this judge leaves in, for consideration that might need censoring from online things, mostly very, very important social security or national security issues, I should say, national security issues, but on the basis that they've been federal government has been doing currently, that will no longer be tolerated.
Interesting on that point. There was a speculation that this perhaps order wouldn't actually be in effect. That the Biden administration would ignore this, but actually doing reporting. Someone who reported on this was a very prominent journalist, Michael Schellenberger, who actually was known for the Twitter files, which really exposed a lot of the censorship conducted by the Biden administration executive branch, particularly the censoring, Biden's censoring of future presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy on vaccine information. But it actually really articulated that. And what he said in this tweet he was talking about, and he was saying that the State Department is actually stop meeting with Facebook, the company Facebook, to actually censor posts what's going on Facebook. So that's a huge step in terms of our freedoms. But also what I would like to articulate, there's this specific phenomena which seems to be taking place with the Biden administration, and it's called gray zones, and particularly with their censorship of the vaccine disinformation. And what gray zones really is it's non-military tactics, which is used to influence or persuade a country to do something. So essentially, like propaganda, or some people would say like cyber security initiatives, like how Iran, Russia, and China and the United States conduct against each other, and kind of similar to the speculation what they had on Donald Trump with the Russiagate, when they said he colluded with the Russian government to promote propaganda against U.S. citizens, which is obviously false. But I'll show this particular quote, Cooper. But this really demonstrates what's going on. So in this quote, it says, "Now and over the next 2 decades, we face strategic challenges stemming from complex interaction between a rapidly changing global balance of military capabilities, emerging technologies, competitor doctrines that pose new threats to the U.S. homeland and to strategic stability, an escalation of competitors' coercive and malign activities in the gray zone, and transitory challenges that impose new demands on the joint force and the defense enterprise." So the joint force is within the DoD. And what this quote, what I pulled from, was the Defensive Department National Strategy, which the U.S. gives every year since, I think, the Reagan administration, and articulates what the U.S. will be doing foreign affairs-wise for each year. And what, within this quote, which is really damaging, was the fact they considered the COVID-19 and climate change as a security issue within this gray zone policy. So really, what's going on with the Biden administration is not behind closed doors. This is really going on. This is something that's promoted to the public every year in the National Defense Strategy. And that's how crazy this is. That's not actually getting mentioned till now, that there was never an order like this before, which clearly demonstrates a First Rights Amendment problem, which Biden committed.
Well, this is their justification, right? This is their justification for why they're able to, perform this kind of conduct on the American people, which are the ones that are supposed to be having their right to protected speech, particularly on online spheres, which has now become the public's, that is now the public space. And so them painting this very broad brush of a national security issue to innocent Americans because they simply share the story of Hunter Biden. And obviously the reason why that was the case is because there was direct ties with Joe Biden, who was the presidential nominee at the time. And that would have had serious ramifications for him politically if the Hunter Biden story came out at the really crucial time that it did. But since it wasn't, that is now labeled a national security issue because, again, it was the threat of Russian disinformation that they were saying, which even the FBI at the time knew was false.
I mean, absolutely. But what we see going on with the Hunter Biden laptop story in COVID-19, that anything goes against the Democrat position and their strategy for the future of America would be damaging for the United States. So, and that's how they proclaim it to the public. And this really shows, and it's really important order by the federal judge in Louisiana, because it really demonstrates what the Biden administration is doing. Also what it does, we're not only just saying that what Biden has done during his administration, what has the Department of Defense, State Department, FBI has been doing under his administration is wrong, but actually giving an order to the Biden administration to stop what they're doing, really actually putting it to force and promoting the First Right Amendment, which should have been done a couple years ago.
Which obviously now the appropriate response that you'd expect for the Joe Biden administration is to now appeal this court decision, which they are now doing. But as you said before, that stories like this, especially as important and as big as the collusion, one of the biggest collusion stories ever between the federal government and social media companies in free speech, you see that mainstream news outlets here, like the laughable CNN, coming out and talking about having just the most ridiculous, bizarre takes on this ruling.
Judge, but this judge was confirmed 98-0 by the Senate. Just reading the words in this injunction, a, quote, massive effort by the defendants to suppress speech based on content, those are the judge's words, calling the present case, quote, arguably involves the most massive attack against free speech in the United States history, Ellie.
Yeah. It's a dramatic decision by this judge. If you read through it, he's citing to literature and George Washington and Ben Franklin. Here's what really is astonishing to me. This is a conservative ideology that clearly comes through in this decision. It's a conservative political ideology, right? We saw some of the quotes questioning vaccines, questioning masks, conservative talking points. But the ruling itself is the opposite of judicial conservatism. This is one of the most aggressive, far-reaching rulings you'll ever see. What this judge is purporting to do is to micromanage, really, the day-to-day interactions between essentially the entire executive branch, all these agencies that are listed as defendants, and the leading social media companies. And in the actual temporary injunction, the judge basically says, you're not allowed, administration, to talk to these social media companies about any protected free speech except for cybersecurity threats, national security threats, criminal threats. But where's the line? Who's going to...
Yeah, so thanks for, conveying the obvious that free speech is a conservative issue, and that's something that we actually care about. And then when the federal government is legitimately colluding to censor information that they don't want out to the public, yes, that is a conservative talking point, and thanks for so brilliantly articulating that, sir.
I don't know. Is he really thinking about what he's saying? He says this judge is preventing the government to micromanage between social media and government, which should have been taking place in the first place. This is not only a conservative talking point. This is an American law in place. It prevents the government from interfering with the social media. And this should be, this is what should be taking on the news. They shouldn't take a case to go pick one side or another. They should be portraying the truth, which is obviously not taking place when this with this CNN anchor.
Right, but we have to acknowledge the fact that they don't want free and open discussion. They don't want free speech to be open to social media companies like Twitter, where damning stories can actually be put out, because when they're controlling the narrative, they can control the flow of information, and they don't want the disseminating opinions to come out. So this ruling is actually taking away a lot of the power that these companies have, taking a lot of the power that the federal government has been wielding behind the scenes, and not allowing this corruption that they themselves have been in charge of this whole time. That's why they're not interested in this, is because they're the ones holding the power of this collusion between social media, corporate media, and the federal government. And the FBI has been the middleman in all this, enforcing all of this ruling.
It's an interesting point. It's not only the government's problem in this, it's also the social media, because they didn't have to take orders from the government. They could have made the decision not to censor individuals. And what you see with particular people like Mark Zuckerberg, and until recently, Jack Dorsey, who actually repented against what he's saying. He's actually going against now and actually supporting candidates like RFK and supporting Elon Musk. Well, at least he's doing the somewhat thing, trying to promote free speech and promote platforms. But there has to be accountability on both sides, and I think there has to be a way of a future. And with this federal judge order, this really promotes at least somewhat progress, because it really promotes and orders the government not to do this. And hopefully this will take place in the future with the State Department and the FBI won't collude again with Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Hopefully that will still take place in the future.
Well, we know they're going to try whatever they can to possibly measle whatever kind of law they can or whatever they can do to ignore the law as much as possible, because that's what the federal government does, is they get their grubby little hands involved in every little thing possible. And Joe Biden is not going to let the important stories that come out, he's not going to let those come to the light as many of them should be, if they have anything to say about it. Now this, I think, takes us a good transitioning point to our next story here, as we have just coming back from 4th of July. If you would like to read this.
Yeah, of course, yes. So seeing the erosion of our freedoms makes it hard to celebrate this 4th of July. So this is really just reminiscent of a lot of our society's thinking of America and the United States as a whole. So, we're talking about July 4th, the celebration of Independence Day, the day that marked us separation from, or our declaration from the separation of the Great Britain. But what what people are actually talking about is how bad America is, which it's clearly ignorant into the fact what the United States really is. And I think this is also obviously a talking point which the Democrats are using for their favor, but also really shows you how the ignorance of history we're showing. A lot of the conveying, what people are conveying is U.S. is bad as a power just conducting war and terror amongst other nations. But that's a disregard for history as a whole, because history as a whole really demonstrates what the United States has done for the world. I mean, in particular, one thing is our Constitution, which what we were talking about is protecting the First Right Amendment, which gave us this is the first country to actually give us individuals' right to actually talk against the government, which is what they're trying to protect. Well, we're talking about the federal judge in Louisiana, right? But that's not what they're talking about. What they're talking about is the countless wars the United States has been in, the countless things that U.S. has done as a state. But it's not showing the positives, and it shows that U.S. is not a semblance of terror. It's about individuals and individuals trying to promote freedom and prosperity, not only about conducting wars overseas.
The point that these left-wing people, the individual that wrote that article, which is a hilarious piece that you should read the entirety of, saying that as a liberal, right, what do you actually have to be proud of the United States? If your philosophy, if your ideology is all true and that's something you actually believe in, then there is no reason for you to celebrate the 4th of July, right? And so that's what we're kind of seeing, this new trend that hyper liberals and leftists are doing, is that they're just taking this opportunity just to bash on the American flag and take the opportunity to hate on America, which again they've been doing that every other day of the week. They still do that, but in particular when they're coming out and they're saying that the actual symbols of our country, something like the flag, it's just an outright symbol of racism. And even if you display the flag in any regard, that is considered racist.
Side of somebody's house, I just automatically assume you racist.
Oh, most definitely. But we felt that way for years. Like, I'm 51, and even as a kid, we knew. It was understood. If there was an American flag at their house, they some racist-ass white motherfuckers. That's just what it was. I thought everybody thought that, or knew that. It's funny to see that they're saying it now, and it's like it's kind of new, but no. Yeah, been thinking about that, thought that forever.
Yeah, so it's completely idiotic to think that the American flag is a symbol of just outright racism, but that's what that ideology is now depicted. That is now the centerpiece of racism in America, is the actual United States flag, and that needs to be replaced with the Pride Progress flag that we saw Joe Biden do earlier a couple weeks ago in the middle of Pride Month, where he hung the Pride flag above or in the center of 2 American flags. So only when the American flag is appeased alongside the Pride Progress flag or the BLM flag or whatever, is it acceptable to have an American flag there. If not, then it needs to be stomped on the ground, it needs to be burned, it needs to be discarded into the wind, because it is a sign of racism, which, I don't know about you, I'm so tired of hearing that term being called racist, because for the past maybe 10 years, that's all I've been hearing from the Democrats is, you Republicans are all racist. Well, thanks for the originality.
Right. I don't know if it's a winning strategy, but this is what Democrats have been doing for a while. And if they do that, they still get a base to support that, because they can't be the party of supporting America, because that's already, the Republicans, at least somewhat, at least supporting patriotically. Yeah. So they have to be somewhat. So they pick America as a racist, because they think that'll appeal to their base of young voters and people who don't know any better, which is, arguably that's very true. And I think partly to blame for this societal change between America, this has not been taking place since probably the last 15, 20 years, right? This hasn't been taking place before. And partly has to do with the fact what we're getting shown in the media. Yes, that is also evidently the cause, but it's also what's going on in schools.
Right. This is the radicalization, right? This is the radicalization of these young people that, whatever that lady wanted to say before, this was not the majority opinion of Americans 10 years ago, that half the country would literally see, or, 33% of the country, 40% of the country would see the American flag as outright racist.
Right. I mean, yeah. Just to go off of that, I think this next video really details, and these are just youths actually demonstrating their contempt against America, and arguably these are kids of college age, and arguably this is what they're getting taught in schools. I mean, I don't know if you remember this, Cooper, but the 1619 Project we talked about before, but this is really important to mention what their ideology is coming from. These postmodernist ideas that's been taking place since the 80s and 90s to show contempt against any Western notion of ideas and freedom and liberalism. So they articulate everything that's not Western as bad, as colonialist, as divide and conquer. But what they don't demonstrate is America is a good thing. But the 1619 Project really demonstrates that America didn't start in 1776. It started in 1619 when the introduction of slavery. And that's what they're getting taught in schools and universities. I don't know about you, but that's what I was getting taught. I was not getting taught about what important things America did to promote freedom. No, I was talking about what they did with slavery and what they did before to colonial subjects in the past, not to demonstrate the positive qualities. But
right, and when you do this is the kind of people that idea fosters.
America is nothing to celebrate. There you go. That's why we are here. Because the crimes that this... they make it so hard to rip that shit up or burn that shit up because they swear that it's a sacred symbol. And on this day, on July 4th, when you're told to wave your American flag and to display it in pride and to be so proud to be an American, we are here to disrespect this flag. Because it does not represent the interests of humanity. And for all the reasons we've been talking about today, that it has the blood of the people of the world.
So that's the kind of things that these ideas are fostering. People that are just outright have a disdain for anything that's American, which is the things that are supposed to, bring us together. That even though we have maybe political differences or ideological differences, religious differences, we can come together as Americans and we can at least have that in common. But this new generation of people that have been indoctrinated, again, that you've been talking about, starting and young education all the way up into the time we graduate, these are the ideas that it's fostering, and the left is only doing more and more to divide us away from those original principles that America is an actually moral country, that is the most tolerant nation that has ever been, that has ever existed, that is the most prosperous nation that has ever been created.
I mean, obviously, on to what you were saying, whether you disagree or agree with destroying the flag, burning the flag, whatever, what's really taking place from this video is not that symbolically. It's the fact that it's this ideology that pervades young people, and to show a hatred towards America and show a hatred towards a group of people and to divide us instead of unifying us under something that we can go together, like the America, like being cohesive together as Americans. And if we keep going on this path as division and not celebrating stuff like July 4th, we're going to just never collude together, and we're going to start dividing more and more and more until the ideas and origins of America will cease to continue. Those things that would make us great will cease to continue if we go on this path. Because I think Ronald Reagan said this, but it's every generation's responsibility to influence the change necessary to keep our freedoms, right? So in his great words, I think I'm misinterpreting his words, but I think he's on the same lines as that. But in his own words, right, what he's saying that we should all come together and promote freedom and try to fight to work together and bring the United States to where it should be, as prosperous as it's always been, and to continue to do that, else we'll go into despair and darkness.
You just got to compare the two, right? Would you rather be going to a family barbecue with food and fireworks and people, having fun, and enjoying the time spending together with friends and family, or would you want to be around lunatics burning the flag, not wanting to light off fireworks because they think it's better for the environment? Which of these two groups would you rather associate with? Personally, for me, I want to have the fun with the people at the nice barbecue. I don't want anything to do with the lunatics burning the American flag and stepping on it and being disgraceful towards it. But Zach, that's about all the time we have for today. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day to talk to me. And for all of you that are out there watching, we really hope you enjoyed this week's Politically Tolerant.
Yeah, as you said, Cooper, as you brilliantly articulate, Also, make sure to join us. We really want to keep going with this. I think we're having fantastic conversations, important conversations that we want to keep doing for the foreseeable future. So make sure to give us that thumbs up. Make sure to hit that subscribe button. So it's been great talking to you, Cooper.
See you, brother.